first, we'll be doing a prediction with Josh Shapiro versus J.D. Vance. Josh Shapiro, of course, is the current Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, and J.D. Vance is the current vice president of the United States. So J.D. Vance has been floated as the most likely candidate for 2028. We're going to be going through a couple Democratic candidates, but throughout this video, we will be cycling through some Democratic candidates, but throughout the video, we'll be focusing, the Republican challenger will always be J.D. Vance. If this video does well, it might make one with Marco Rubio or another possible or Republican contender. But at the moment, J.D. Vance is seen as the most likely candidate for the Republicans in 2028. So we'll be going with him as a Republican nominee. This isn't necessarily a prediction that either any of these candidates are going to win their primary, just fun to do a general election prediction between a couple different options. So we'll get started off. I know I mentioned at the start, we'll start out with Josh Shapiro as the Democratic contender. We'll be going through an electoral college map. We won't be doing all the people on this list, but we'll start with Josh Shapiro. So we'll start out, I'll try to do relatively the same path, and I'll probably mention some repeatable things about a bunch of different states, just because most of the time that's how the states will go. But we'll start out in Nevada and then move eastward. So I'm going to add a tilt characterization in Nevada. I think that this will be a fairly easy Democratic pickup. I think that Shapiro he definitely portrays himself as more of a moderate. He, of course, took a more pro-Israel position on the situation in Gaza, and some Democrats haven't loved that, so he has been known to break from his party in some instances. He is also been touted as a pretty effective governor. He's been able to do some impressive things in his term. He was elected fairly recently. His Republican challenger was a pretty extreme candidate, so he was able to win fairly well in the state of Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, of course, as you can see here, is the swing state with the most electoral college votes. So we'll get to that state later, but that will be a good home state advantage. And then we get to Arizona. Arizona, I think, will actually be a different characterization. I'm going to go with the tilt red rating for this. This is going to be, I would guess, 11 electoral college votes for J.D. Vance. So that is going to bring J.D. Vance to 230, to Shapiro's 231. And I think that will get bumped up to 232, as I'm going to call this district the Omaha district for Josh Shapiro. So this district even went to Harris in 2024. So Democrats are fairly confident they'll be able to win it again in 2028. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in this district, but for now I feel fairly confident putting it in the Democratic Party's column. And then we'll go down to the south and then end with the Rust Belt. So in Georgia, I think Georgia is going to, if it were between these two candidates and the election were to be held today, that Georgia would end up in the tilt Democratic Party's column. Josh Shapiro, like I mentioned, more of a moderate. He's got some broad appeal, and I think that would play well in Georgia. The state didn't go as far to the right as many of the other swing states did in 2024, and I do think the larger demographic shifts of the Sun Belt, that being the states of Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia, will become more and more Democratic friendly. And I think that if the election were to be held today between these two candidates, that it would result in a tilt blue, but nonetheless, a Democratic victory in the state of Georgia. North Carolina, however, I don't feel as confident calling for the Democrats. I think that it would definitely be an uphill battle for Democrats, even with a pretty electable candidate like Shapiro to win the state of North Carolina. Right now, it's a good environment for Democrats at large, but I would argue not good enough for them to win the state on the presidential level. Both Georgia and North Carolina have interesting Senate elections that are going to take place in 2026. That can give us an indication if the states are willing to vote blue on the statewide level. Of course, some voters only come out for the presidential elections, so that should be an important factor to remember. But for now, that's going to be 16 electoral college votes for J.D. Vance in North Carolina. So that brings us to 248 to 246. Then I'm going to go to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania would probably be in the lean blue rating. This state, of course, is Shapiro's home state. And I could certainly see it in the tilt. It is by nature a swing state. And I do think that Rust Belt at large will become more and more Republican friendly over the years. But I think that with the right candidate like Josh Shapiro, he would be able to carry his home state. And that is going to be 3 votes shy of the presidency. And then generally the Rust Belt does vote together. I don't feel as confident as putting Wisconsin and Michigan into the lean Dem category, but I do think it would probably vote with Pennsylvania and end up in Josh Shapiro's column. So that is 292 to 246. So that's going to be the first candidate. We will now change all of the swing states to toss-up, including the swing district here in Nebraska. And we'll be going on to the next candidate. I might skip a few, but we'll be going through a couple of these. So we had Gavin Newsom. This is loading. We'll do Newsom at the end. And let's see here. So next up, let's go with former Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. I've done predictions with him, but he has been floated as one of the top contenders. He's usually in the top, well, let's see here. This list has him in the top 7, if I remember correctly. Number 7, let's see here. I believe he was around that ballpark ranking. So we're going to do a prediction with Pete Buttigieg. Many of these states are going to vote the same. What'll be interesting to see if any, I might predict some of them differently, but we'll have to go through the list individually per candidate. So if the candidate were Pete Buttigieg, of course, rose to fame in 2020, running for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination, and he did fairly well. He ultimately ended up dropping out and endorsing Biden, but the Buttigieg campaign performed pretty well, and Biden actually ended up appointing him to the Secretary of Transportation position, which he served for the 4 years of the Biden term. And he has been gaining some more experience, and Democrats are hopeful that he can be the nominee to go up against J.D. Vance. He is got, so I'm going to start out in Nevada and go eastward, like I mentioned earlier. So in Nevada, I don't think it would be in the lean category this time. I think Pete Buttigieg I think he's an electable candidate, but I don't think quite as electable as Shapiro. So that was going to be tilt blue in the state of Nevada. And then the state of Arizona, I'm going to put that in the lean red, or in the tilt red column. I think that Buttigieg might actually have a better shot in Arizona than Shapiro, weirdly enough, but for now I'm going to put it in the lean, or in the tilt red column. And then we'll end with the Rust Belt. I think the state of Georgia, I would probably call that to be in the tilt blue column. Pete Buttigieg also floated as more of a moderate, and I think that would appeal well to some key voting demographic groups throughout all the swing states, but especially in the Sun Belt and Georgia specifically. So that is going to be 16 votes for Pete Buttigieg. And then North Carolina, I'm going to put that in the Republican Party's column. And then we're going to go, now we have the Rust Belt. It is currently 247 to 246. I do think Pete Buttigieg is going to get the district here in Nebraska, the Omaha region. Right now I'm just going to put it in the tilt rating. And then that leaves us with these 3 Rust Belt states. So I'm going to start with Wisconsin. I do think Wisconsin would probably be Buttigieg's a good chance at winning that one. And then Michigan, most likely also in the tilt blue column. I think Pennsylvania would probably be a hard one to win. But for now, I do think it is the most likely to end up in the Republican Party's column between these two candidates. Ultimately, it doesn't matter too much. That's still 273 enough electoral college votes for Pete Buttigieg to secure the presidency in this hypothetical matchup. Now we'll be moving on to the next candidate. If this will load, I've never done a prediction with Gretchen Whitmer. We can do one with her. Gretchen Whitmer, I feel like I've said this about most of the Democrats, but she's been floated as a potential option. She, of course, is the governor of Michigan, Democratic governor of Michigan, and she's worked with Trump and even appeared on stage at his rallies. And she also has been floated as more of a moderate. She's got some Rust Belt appeal. J.D. Vance, of course, does too. But in this case, it's much more important to be from a swing state like Michigan than a likely state such as Ohio. J.D. Vance, of course, was the former senator from Ohio before he was picked as Trump's running mate. So we'll get to the Rust Belt at the end. Well, actually, no, we can do the Rust Belt now. For now, I'm going to put Michigan. I do think Michigan and Wisconsin end up in the lean Democratic ratings. That's going to be 250 to 219. And then Pennsylvania, I'm going to put that in the tilt blue rating. I think Whitmer would do pretty well. She's won elections in Michigan as a Democrat, or possibly just one. I don't know how long she's been in office. But that is going to be 269 to 219. And then I think she would have a shot in North Carolina, but ultimately I think it would be close, but it would end up in the Republican Party's column. And then we're going to go with Georgia, which for now I'm going to put in the Democratic Party's column. And then I do think Whitmer would probably have a decent chance at winning the other half of the Sun Belt, being Arizona and Nevada. So that's going to be 17 more electoral college votes. So as you can see, I predict, we'll go with in the district in Omaha. We'll put that in the lean blue rating. So that is going to be one more electoral college vote for Gretchen Whitmer. So 303 to 235. Gretchen Whitmer, I think, would probably be one of the more electable candidates that Democrats could put forward. As you can see here, with this pretty significant margin in favor of the Democratic governor of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Let's see, your Illinois governor, we'll skip that one. Wes Moore, we'll skip that one. And then next up, we'll do one with Vice President Harris. So Harris, of course, as I just mentioned, was the vice president under the Biden administration. She later was the nominee for Democrats on the presidential level in 2024. After Biden dropped out of the race, she kind of rose to power. Well, she was already in the vice presidency, but she was put forward as the most likely contender, and the Democrats nominated her at convention. It was a bit of an interesting process, but nonetheless, she actually ended up losing fairly significantly. Trump won every swing state aside from the swing district in Nebraska, and as you can, I'll come back to the district in Nebraska, but it was a really good election for Republicans in 2024. They won the presidency and were able to win the House and Senate as well. So not a great year for Democrats. Now is a more favorable environment for Democrats. I'll do this prediction based on if the election were to be held today, just like I've been doing for the other ones. But I'll start out in Nevada. I think Nevada, in this case, would be in the tilt blue rating. Arizona, and I'll try to go through these states a little bit faster. Arizona, I would predict in the tilt red rating. And then Georgia, I'm going to go with tilt blue. And then North Carolina, tilt red. So as you can see, many of these states are fairly consistently staying in one party or another. These swing states are, right now, it's just a favorable environment for Democrats, but I do think that Republican J.D. Vance would have some appeal and will be able to win some swing states. I don't think if the election were to be held today that it would necessarily be a 2024 blowout kind of election where one candidate wins every swing state. I do think it would be a breakup of the swing states into various political camps. And then the district here in Omaha, I'm going to put that in the tilt blue rating. So that is going to be 248 to 246, with Harris taking the lead. And then we'll get, in the state of Pennsylvania, I'm going to put that into J.D. Vance's column. That is going to be 265. And then, however, like I mentioned before, I think Pennsylvania's Republicans' best chance at winning a swing state. But Harris, I do think, would probably have a better chance in Michigan and Wisconsin. I probably feel the least confident in calling Michigan. I think Michigan could very likely end up in the Republican Party's column. So that state would really decide the presidency. We can do a little switch so that would be 280 to 258. If I had to call it, I think just with the more favorable environment for Democrats, I don't think Harris she wasn't an electable candidate in 2024. And I don't think she'd be the most electable option that Democrats will consider in 2027 and whatnot for the Democratic primary. So that is going to be 273 to 265, a narrow victory for Vice President Harris under the Biden administration. And then we'll be going on to the next candidate. We will do, if I remember correctly, it is going to be AOC. Yep. So I've done a couple predictions with AOC. We'll do another one here. So AOC, I think, would probably be one of the least electable to put forward. She's definitely got some more progressive views with the kind of appeal to younger voters through democratic socialism. She is, of course, a current congresswoman from New York. And she, if I remember correctly, she won the Democratic primary, the Democratic primary for that district in 2018. And she still remains in the House to this day. So we're going to clear all of these states, go through and do a prediction for AOC versus J.D. Vance. So I'm going to start out in Nevada. I've gone back and forth in Nevada. Generally, for AOC at least, I've fairly consistently put it into the Republican Party's column. But for now, I'm going to go with a tilt blue rating. I think that now is just generally a more favorable environment for Democrats. And I think Democrats probably would have a good shot at winning the state of Nevada back. The state, of course, did go to Trump on the presidential level in 2024. They also have a Republican governor. So the state has expressed openness to voting for Democrats and Republicans. But prior to the 2024 election, aside from the governorship as well, they do have 2 Democratic senators as well as 3 Democratic Congress women and men to 1 Republican. And this general Democratic favor, I think, would result in a Democratic victory in the state of Nevada. I do think it would be close with AOC, but nonetheless, 6 votes for AOC. Arizona, I think, would probably be a different call. I'd go with I might even be willing to do a lean, but for now, we're going to go with tilt for the state of Arizona. And then I actually didn't change the district characterization here in the Omaha region for this. I think that Harris she was able to win it in 2024. And like I mentioned at the start of the prediction AOC, getting them mixed up. So AOC, I think, would narrowly be able to win this district. It did go to Harris. And that was a pretty bad environment for Democrats. So I'm going to give that to AOC with 1 vote for her. And then I'll go up to Wisconsin. I do think Wisconsin is AOC one of her more likely chances to win a swing state. And then I don't think Democrats will get much past this, anything past 242. If I were to predict it today with J.D. Vance being the Republican candidate, I would probably put the remaining states in the tilt Republican column, bringing us to 296 to 242, a victory for J.D. Vance. Pretty big victory, of course, still losing the district in Omaha and 2 swing states, but nonetheless, like I mentioned at the start, I don't think AOC would be a very electable candidate in the general election. I think she would even have a hard time making it through the Democratic primary. But I do think between the primary and the general, she would have a better shot in the primary, but would probably lose to a Republican in the general. That's going to be AOC. And then, if I remember correctly, Gavin Newsom is going to be the most likely contender here for the Democrats. So we'll end with Gavin Newsom. So Gavin Newsom, of course, is the current governor of California on the Democratic Party side. I think that he would probably be able to win the state of Nevada. So that is going to be 6 electoral college votes. And I'm going to bring the rest of these to toss up. So Gavin Newsom, I'm going to put the district here in Omaha into the lean blue rating. So that's going to be 1 more vote for Gavin Newsom. And then we get to Arizona. I'm going to put this into the Republican Party's column. I've fairly consistently put it in the Republican Party's column. Gretchen Whitmer, of course, if I remember correctly, could be a different candidate, but was able to win it, but fairly consistently in the Republican Party's column. And then we'll go to the South. Georgia, I could see Gavin Newsom winning this state. I think it would be quite a bit more difficult to win the state of North Carolina. I think it's possible with the general environment for Democrats being pretty favorable at the moment, that it is possible. Like I mentioned earlier, the Senate elections will give us an idea, but nonetheless, those 2 states would be states to keep an eye on. And then I do think in this case scenario that Rust Belt will probably vote together. I think it would be narrow, but I'm going to go with the call as such. So that's going to be 292 to 246. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.